Thank you for joining us here on the NPTE Final Frontier podcast. My name is David, and today we will be interviewing Dr. Josh Funk. Josh is the founder and CEO of Rehab to Perform. He's a former D1 lacrosse player for Ohio State. He received his BS degree from the Ohio State University and his DPT from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. Once graduating, he founded Rehab to Perform in the late 2014. He has also completed two business accelerator programs with the Small Business Development Center and Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Graduate, and he is a fellow of the Birthing of the Giants program. He has done many podcast interviews before, so no, this is not his first rodeo. And he has not joined us until right now, but it's very exciting to have Dr. Josh Funk here. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
David, thanks for having me. You are doing great things for the upcoming part of the profession. And I just overall, it's been awesome to kind of see your impact and some of the stuff you all have going on. We take a lot of students on throughout the course of the year, and many of them have referenced the things that you all have going on with NPTE.
I love to hear that. It's always great to hear, especially that from students' perspectives, and the word of mouth is so valuable and important. And as you know, same thing with treating patients and owning a business, it all comes with passion. It's all passion.
Yeah, you're making a huge impact. I know that your guys' tagline, right? Helping one student at a time, I think. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So tell us, how did you get interested to become a physical therapist?
I was very fortunate to have avoided a lot of major injuries throughout my time as a youth athlete, high school athlete. You know, I played 9 different sports before high school. I played 3 sports while I was in high school. Feel very fortunate. I know not a lot of people get to have that kind of a sporting or athletics experience. And it was not until my sophomore year of college at Ohio State that I had my first major injury, and somebody used the word surgery. I had a torn labrum and torn rotator cuff. And that was the first time that I'd gone through PT, where I needed to show up to the training room before practice, have a hybrid situation where I'm doing certain things off the field during practice and working with strength coach, sport coach, PT, AT, to try to figure out a way to allow me to play through the remainder of the year. Because as it was told to me, things would either get worse and I would know that I needed surgery sooner, or they could potentially get better. Fortunately for me, throughout the course of the season, they got better. And I got to the end of the year and I went, you know what? My shoulder rarely bothers me, and it really only bothers me if I shoot the ball as hard as possible. So I came home, got a second opinion as well. And they were like, you know what? Try a summer of PT without doing all of the lacrosse moves that you're used to, and see how your shoulder responds. Now, that's where I get into the big difference between what I had exposure to at school versus what was available in the community. And that's really how Rehab to Perform was, kind of originated. But regardless, I was able to rehab my shoulder mostly through virtual PT before it became a big thing in the pandemic, where I'm, pretty much, and I shouldn't say virtual, but on the phone with the PT and the strength coach modifying my workouts all summer. But I never had surgery. So I had such a good experience. It allowed me to avoid surgery. I think I looked to those people at that stage of my life as mentors. I had always enjoyed learning about the human body, enjoyed working out. I never wanted to be sitting at a computer, which is pretty funny given the fact that business ownership involves certain chunks of that now. But regardless, I had the itch, and I completely shifted and changed course from PA or orthopedic surgeon to a physical therapist.
That's incredible. And so how was the recovery? Like, how was your performance once you were able to return after all of that?
Knock on wood, I have never had any more shoulder issues the rest of the time. Was still able to hit the 100-mile-per-hour mark on shooting. Was still able to take impact, give direct blows to other players. And overall, there's certain things where if I go in the weight room and I do them, I don't know if it's just irritated in general, like where they're just exercises that maybe I shouldn't be doing at 38. But I've got a couple exercises that I just know that if I do them at high volume or at high weights for a long period of time, it probably is not best for me. But hey, 38 can't be perfect.
No, I definitely can relate. I mean, I wrestled throughout college and everything, so I definitely know about being banged up through injuries and stuff like that. And I know with you going to Ohio State, I had the opportunity. I don't know, you're probably familiar with the wrestling coach over there, Tom Ryan.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he used to coach over at Hofstra. So I used to
Okay.
go to Hofstra to the wrestling clinics over there where he was. So that was a little bit of a. Now, every time Ohio State is wrestling, I always have to cheer for them.
Yeah, they
So
have amazing wrestling, amazing facility. I tell you what, I always thought wrestlers were different, but until you get around college wrestlers, you don't really understand how much different. And I think from an overall toughness standpoint, I'd have to pick top two: wrestling and gymnastics. I mean, you just the psychology of the individuals that perform those sports on a regular basis are different.
yeah, I definitely could see that. And I mean, lacrosse, you have to be built differently too. I've always had such a respect for lacrosse players because and it's a sport that I never played, but kind of wish that I did play lacrosse. Seems like a lot of fun.
Especially if you grew up in the Hofstra. I mean, the Hofstra Pride haven't been too bad, and there's a couple other SUNY schools in that area. I think right, Stony Brook's right around the corner, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how far like Siena or the Manhattan Jaspers, or I'm trying to think, St. John's is up. I mean, there's plenty of options in that area.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so Rehab to Perform, how did you end up going into starting a clinic now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I've always had the entrepreneurial bug. I did the paper route in middle school, and that was kind of the first place where I was like, I kind of enjoyed the hustle, kind of enjoyed doing my thing, and obviously receiving some compensation as a result of my efforts. And then that spun into swim lessons in high school. That spun into lacrosse camps, clinics, private lessons when I was in college. The first business that I actually created was a lacrosse services company. It was called Lax Factory. That was 2011, which was the year that I graduated from PT school. Because I know that I wasn't quite ready to start a full-fledged PT business. As you and many of the listeners may be aware, there's not a lot of business discussed when you're in PT school. So that was my side hustle, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn the ins and outs of business. That eventually got to a point where it was 280 kids in a club team program, both boys and girls, on 14 different teams. So it became a big deal. But that was where I got my roots. 3 years later, after I started that organization, I started Rehab to Perform. It was in a small 1,200 square foot space in between two turf fields at Frederick Sports Center. I could walk outside of the space. It was flat rate rent, and I could go use the gym equipment that was also in between the two turf fields. So decreased overhead, like a lot of the gym-based concepts you have out there. But I had this vision in my head that I was going to be able to create the kind of enjoyable sports medicine environment that I had exposure to at Ohio State, where I didn't feel like I was making a grudge purchase or was thinking of the words I have to. Instead, putting people in a position where it was an I get to environment. And we equated it very, very early on to like the cheers of PT, right? So if you can think about the local neighborhood bar, your barber shop, or your salon, or whatever, but a social place, there's interaction, there's friendships gained, there's a motivating aspect to all of the different either conversations going on or the things that were on the walls, the music that was being played, how potentially your PTs were talking to you, dressing, structuring your plans and process, a certain amount of individualization and personalization. I mean, that was one thing that was very, very clear to me when I came home. It was like, I'm doing the same shoulder sheet as the 50-plus-year-old individual over there that's not going to play college lacrosse this fall. What's going on here? Like, that doesn't make sense. So taking a lot of the very, very enjoyable components of an athletic training room environment, other areas of society that people typically like to go to and socialize and spend time at, where they're not in a rush to get out of their session, and implementing that into our own secret sauce. And I think in the beginning, we delivered a really good service and made it really fun. We knew nothing about business behind the scenes. I can think of the first 3 people that we had with our team. Dr. Zach Baker, who's still with us today. We're very fortunate to still have him. But it's been an amazing journey. I feel very, very fortunate to learn fast as a result of knowing when I'm failing fast and being incredibly resourceful. And now we stand here, and I think the other day we did a head count. We got 93 people. We're about to open up our 11th office. We made it through the pandemic. We had our first fee schedule increase this year, which for all the people out there that are talking about declining reimbursements, they do exist. And obviously I'm super pumped about that because it leads to benefits for our team. And I think we're doing some really, really cool things to overall impact just the physical therapy market in the DMV, which is DC metro area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
That's incredible. And I think that's something that you mentioned that's very important is that personalization, especially with being a business owner. You want that personal experience for anybody that walks into your doors, especially a patient, just like how you made the comparison to Cheers. You want everybody to know your name. You want everybody to recognize you and be like, hey, how's the family and this and that. And of course, you're going to get to their exercises at some point, but you don't have to, once they come in, you don't have to get right into the exercise, get them in, get them out, get the ankle weights, get the heat, get the, let's do this and this and this, and we'll see you next time. Make sure you schedule on the way out.
I agree. And I think the biggest thing that I think of there is also from a business strategy standpoint, it's good to know what your people are doing outside the clinic, because the more that you know what they're doing outside of the clinic, the more that you can get connected to the world outside of the clinic. And I think in a position we are where there's a lot of focus on digital media, social media, online space, old school handshakes and smiles at in-person events still goes a really, really long way. And obviously you need to own those with your patients, but making sure that you can find ways to get connected outside of your community, knowing that especially if you have an ideal patient population that you are enjoying working with, you might want to find more of those same people somewhere.
Well said, well said. So, what is one thing that you feel could be done to make the physical therapy profession better?
Decrease the cost of education. The cost of education is too much. I know that we were very, very, very well intentioned, I think, with getting the DPT. And I think the DPT and direct access and a higher level of education does a great job to position the profession. However, the cost of that is regularly being communicated as something that does not match the ROI on the profession. You cannot have the cost of education outpace the wages in the profession and still attract young people, especially in a situation where you have inflationary times with regards to cost in a lot of different aspects of our lives. So education would be the single greatest place that I would like to regularly have conversations. And I've honestly even heard somebody suggest not taking students from some of the higher cost universities as a way of pushing back on those universities' costs and suggesting that without them coming down to more of the bell curve, that there's no need for us to work with them. And that is something that we are considering, just given the fact that I don't know how else to fully impact that space besides creating awareness and talking about it.
Yeah, well said. And I think that that's very important with the cost of education being so high. And I feel like that's one of the things that we've been seeing so much from people that do have complaints about the field or get to have those being swayed to go into, let's say, a PA position. They start to say, well, why am I going to go pay this much for school, graduate, not get paid as much, and have to work this amount of time while also doing documentation that's probably going to be off the book? And it starts to be a downward slope where everybody just starts to go down and down and down, and then you have that shift over to the next field.
Yeah, and you want to attract people to healthcare overall. And I think it's important to mention we are not the only healthcare profession having the same conversations and some of the same challenges. So I do think this is a greater conversation that needs to be had at the university level, and that our state and national organizations need to be doing things to create awareness and ideally create change. Otherwise, I worry that looking around in 5, 10, 15 years, you will start to have massive shortages. And although I'm sure that there's going to be an AI robot that can do certain lower levels of PT, people will not be getting highly skilled care. And I worry about the outcome changes, how that will affect, and almost be the opposite of what we are designed to do, which is to decrease the amount of shots, decrease the amount of opioids, decrease the amount of surgeries. A lot of that's predicated on outcomes. And if you're not attracting a lot of the best professionals to healthcare, I worry that we're going to be spending even more on healthcare and be having even worse outcomes than we currently do, which also, from a ratio standpoint of cost and value, we're the worst in the world.
Yeah, and I think that I'm going to take it back to where we kind of started with that personalization. With if you have an AI come in and start working with your patients, giving them the program and stuff like that too, not only tracking do you end up losing potentially, but that face-to-face person, that personal touch you end up losing. And I feel like sometimes I hear it with a lot of my patients, and where that personal touch of making a joke with them or just listening to them or making them feel wanted and heard, that all goes right out the window. And we can't
Yeah,
lose that.
I'm with you. And I think we saw that the most during the pandemic where, I mean, people were happy to get outside of their house and still come to the clinic. And they went, this is the best part of my day. Are you sure you don't want to do virtual? Absolutely not. I got to get out of the house and stand in front of a real human being. And I think that, yes, there's a big push for convenience, and there are benefits to the online space and having optionality present with regards to how you're delivering a service. But I do think that a lot of people, especially when it comes to doing something that is more physical in nature, and there's a heavy conversational aspect, problem solving, things that also at times will require some kind of hands-on, that the in-person aspect of physical therapy is something that I hope never goes away.
I agree. And I mean, I'm sure it's the same thing with you, but a big reason why we got into this field is that personal touch. If you go into you, I'm sure everybody out there listening, you included, has had a doctor or something that just kind of you go in for maybe 10 minutes session and then you're out after a follow-up, and one of that's not physical therapy. Physical
Right.
therapy is far from that.
Yeah. I
So,
think, you know, we talked about a couple things there with documentation and volume. And, I think at the end of the day, understanding it, whatever industry we get into from a schooling standpoint, like, has a business component. We got into a service-based business. Any service-based business, we have to appreciate the business dynamics there. But I do think that more and more, especially as we talk about principles of conscious capitalism, and we are out of this era of a high volume, shake and bake style care, that was largely pushed by either pops or private equity based PT places, that we do need to find this happy medium. We do need to find this happy medium of best business practice and best service delivery, knowing that we're trying to shift out of what is considered best business practices. But I would argue it's short term. We could go down whole different rabbit holes. But having as many people in your doors in one day might seem like great for that one day. But when I think of patient churn, when I think of patient outcomes, I don't think it's a long-term way of continuing to attract people to all of the benefits of the profession.
yeah, totally. So what's the biggest difficulty that you face personally when starting up your own business?
I knew very, very little about business, and I definitely knew very little about standard operating procedures, checklists, putting things in place that allowed individuals to have some wiggle room and individuality, but lead them to similar outcomes. We were a very, very people dependent business early on, and I realized that when we opened up our second office. There was not enough structure. Things were much more dependent on me being around or me being available or me answering a question or individuals that were at the first location having the knowledge and us working together enough to know how to do things. But then you open up the second office and there's no carryover. And then you're trying to communicate, well, why can't you do it like these group of people over here? Well, because you have nothing in place to communicate to people how things should be done. So early on, we were very, very good, as I mentioned, at I think clinical care, at the vibe of the clinic. People came back because they enjoyed things, but we were losing money on the back end, missing stuff, missing leads, just overall very, very disorganized. And when we opened that second office, which I always say is the hardest office, we realized how quickly we had to put things in place to create a sustainable business. But the SOPs, the operations, the things that you don't necessarily see or think about when you go into a patient care environment, but they're the things that you feel when they are done poorly.
I definitely could understand that for sure. So with regards to students, what is one piece of advice that you would give to a physical therapy student?
Make sure that you're getting exposure outside of the classroom. It pains me when I hear professors in a PT school say that the only thing that you should be doing during your 2 to 3 years is just PT school. There's so many other ways to enrich your life, so many other ways to invest in yourself, so many other ways to prepare for yourself post-graduation, to be a more well-rounded individual, to be quite honest. Like, imagine leaving school and then having somebody say, the only thing that I want you to focus on is your 9 to 5 job. That's pretty much what somebody is saying with PT school. Don't do anything else. Put all of your efforts on just this one thing. And I just never did that as an athlete growing up. I never did that as an athlete that also had a summer job growing up. So I don't know why individuals wouldn't volunteer. I don't know why they wouldn't work. I don't know why they wouldn't develop certain levels of competency and literacy in other areas of life. For me, I'm thinking financial. I'm thinking sales being two things that make you valuable regardless. You could have personal financial literacy. You could have professional financial literacy. Sales, can you sell yourself? Can you sell the company you work for? Those are things that are going to work out for you wherever you go. You could put yourself in a service-based industry, personal training. You could be doing stuff to put yourself in a position to have a high customer service load, which could be serving. I'm speaking from experience about things that I did, but you are more than just a student, and you need to be focusing on the big picture and on the long term. You are also in the most energetic time of your life. You've got tons of energy. You probably have way, way less responsibilities and commitments. You probably don't have kids. You probably don't have a spouse. At least the majority of our students when I was in school did not have kids or a spouse. Very few of them had mortgages. So your level of responsibility, let's also mention the fact you don't have student loans yet, right? So your student loans, you're not paying for them.
True.
So you're at the best possible in your time to do more, do extra, find ways to put yourself ahead. If you do just like everybody else, and the only thing that you're doing is school, great. You might get some good grades, but nobody cares after you get your license. I've never asked a single person ever what they got on their grades. So, and I'm speaking I was a B student myself. While I was going through school, I was honestly being a personal trainer. I was serving at a restaurant through certain periods of time, especially clinical rotations. And I was fortunate enough that professional lacrosse is still a weekend gig, and I was doing that on the weekends. And I'm not saying everybody's got to do all that, but find ways to have less student loans and ideally position yourself to be a more well-rounded human being when you hit the ground running after your graduation.
That's incredible. And you mentioned about finances and everything. So here is a special question for you now. So this is a question that we ask all of our guests. They have no clue what the question's going to be.
Love it.
And we change it. Every single guest has a different question.
Okay.
So here is a question for you. Being a business owner, who is a business owner or financial advisor who you'd like to have a conversation with over dinner? For me, I'm going with Warren Buffett. Who are you going with?
That is a great conversation start. Man, I have to say that I would like to sit down with Mark Cuban. I think that there
Good
are
choice.
some things that he has done in his life that I'm very, very curious about. I think he has certain outlooks on business, some of which I agree with, some of I don't necessarily agree with. But it's no secret he's been tremendously successful in a multitude of different aspects of business, of society. And he would be somebody I think that I could have some really, really good conversations with, tons of questions to ask him. And overall, I would be in a significantly better spot after I was done with our time together.
That Mark Cuban is a great selection as well, because you could definitely pick. I mean, he's one of the sharks on Shark Tank, so you could definitely pick his mind about every single vision that he has and how it relates to you. I think anybody would definitely benefit from sitting a sit down with Mark Cuban for sure.
I mean, you got tech, sports, right? Look what he's doing with regards to the cost of pharmaceuticals right now.
Yeah.
The tremendous investor. And he shares about that, what he's done with some of his investment money from some of his sales. So like he's somebody he's hit home runs in multiple different areas. And I just think it would be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, a lot of people forget about him getting his start in the technology field, where they think Dallas Mavericks and Shark Tank and stuff like that. They don't even recall anything with the involvement with like Yahoo and stuff like that back when he first started.
Yep. You're spot on, man. I think it'd be pretty cool.
Good selection, good selection. Well, how can our listeners get in touch with you and where can they find you on social media?
At Dr. Josh Funk on Instagram, and especially for this population, connect with me on LinkedIn. I've been spending a lot more time on LinkedIn recently. And if you have enough questions, I'm happy to make time for a phone call. It'll usually be when I'm out and about or driving, but I am going to be much more responsive over a call. So if you don't mind messaging me, say you've got a couple questions, let's get straight to setting up a time to connect, and hopefully I can provide value to wherever you are at your step in the journey.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. We appreciate you and your time, and we look forward to next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Now that you heard our interview with Dr. Josh Funk, here is a quote from Jim Rohn. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishments. You have to have that discipline with your studies. But as you heard on this episode, you also have to get out there. Don't just be stuck in a book. Have that discipline to know that it's okay to go out there. Go have that second job. Go enjoy yourself. Go to a concert. Go work out. Don't tell yourself that if you have time to go work out, that you have time to study, and then you should feel bad for yourself if you do poor on examination. Get out there. Have that discipline with your studies, but have discipline in knowing what else you can achieve out there. Go get every single goal that you want to get, and you can do it. You are powerful. You are strong. You are a final frontier warrior. You will pass. Thank you very much for listening. For more information on NPTE Final Frontier, please visit NPTEFF.com. You can also check us out on all social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Till next time, have a great day and a powerful tomorrow. Thank you once again.